Welcome to Beyond Sundays, a podcast from two friends trying to follow Jesus more closely. Odds are you won't always agree with us, and we'll stumble along the way, but we promise to be open and honest all the way through. I'm Matt, here with Hannah. We've got a website you can use to keep track our show links and socials all in one place. Check out beyondsundays.pod.com. We're grateful to all of our listeners and genuinely thank you for fitting us into your busy life. You can help us grow the community by stopping for just a second, following, rating, and reviewing us on Apple and Spotify. Whether you are doing dishes or in the car or walking around or working out or laying on the couch in your hygge, seriously, thank you so much for listening to us.
Thank you so very much. We appreciate it.
Yeah, you inspired me because I saw you fiddling with pillows right as we started recording. So the YouTubers just got, they got your hygge just right
here.
in there.
That's right. This couch is the comfiest couch in the world too. So at least according to Ja Ray, he says it's comfy. So
that's wonderful.
Shout out Ja Ray.
Shout out Ja Ray. How are you, Hannah?
I'm okay. It's hot, but what can you do? What can you do when it's October 15th and still 80 some degrees outside?
Rage is what you could do. I
have a spooky sweater I want to wear, and I don't know if I'll get to wear it, but maybe once this month. And I was going to wear it once a week.
You'll have a heat stroke.
Seriously, you will. Yeah. It's so hot.
It's angering. Speaking of angering, though, I was in class today, and shouts to the school that I work at. Just shouts to the kid. They're just wonderful. It's great every day. Just tremendous. So I'm sitting in this class today, and we're just, it's a class where they're working on something. So some days when they're working on something and I feel like they can multitask, I like to just start a random conversation, because if everything's hitting right, they can have it. We can have this fun conversation. Yeah. I can get to know them. They can get to know me. They can keep working. So we're having it today. I find out not one, but two kids in this class I have today have been struck by a car. With their human bodies. Yes, their human bodies getting hit with a car.
How in this world?
Well, two different stories. Neither of it obviously was at high speed. They were both fine. But one girl, I'll just make them real short. One girl was walking across a crosswalk, and somebody was turning right and just was going like 15 miles an hour. Didn't slow down. She ended up like sitting on the hood of the car for a second. The car didn't stop, rolled down the window, make sure she was okay, and then just drove on. And then another girl, was in the parking lot of a place, and it was just a classic, like, Granny didn't put it in park. And so the car just kind of like rolled into her, but it rolled into the other car. She was kind of like trapped between the cars for a second. So that's kind of a scary.
That is scary. Did it break her legs?
No, everything was fine. The car was rolling. So it was a pinch situation, but it's not good all the way around. Not good.
No. Okay. So since everyone was okay, I'm going to chuckle.
Yes. I would not have said either of these things if they weren't okay. Absolutely not. No way.
Well, Molly and I always talk about how certain things are just so embarrassing. If you were just hit by a car like that, and then you just have to keep walking wherever it was that you were, that is tremendously embarrassing. Like, I don't think I could recover after that.
Yeah,
I'd
the
have
second
to call
girl
the cab to come get me.
That was like pinned between the cars was headed to a track meet, so she just had to walk it off and go over there and run. Yeah. So
that is unreal.
Yes. So here's what I told you that. This is what I really want to ask you. Okay, you're standing there on a piece of pavement. There's a car coming at you about 35 miles an hour. It's a bad situation. Not good.
Yeah.
What is your strategy? Do you at all try to just jump up onto the hood of the car and run?
Never. Who would try that?
I don't know. I don't want to go test
that's
it.
That's your method?
In my head, I'm like, oh no, I can't get out of the way. So I can't just, you want me to just like lower my shoulder and act like I'm on the D line and just try to take the car?
So there's no way to just run? I thought I could try to run and beat
I think
the car.
You have, in my dumb scenario that I have just made up for you, so congratulations, welcome to my world. I think you have noticed too late, and it's like right there.
Well, I would hope that I had taken some sort of class that I would just know how to fall. You know how sometimes people know how to fall?
Okay. So
you know what I'm talking about?
Fall on the road and get run over?
No, I'd fall onto the hood and roll. My hope would be I would like roll onto the hood and then up the windshield. That's what I'm hoping would happen.
Okay.
But I'm not sure if that strategy works either.
Okay. We also did, just to let you know what kind of class period. Now, listen, they were designing things. We got done tons of things designed. Everybody was working. But we also had this conversation, and a kid hypothesized that if the car's coming at you like that, you jump off of one foot onto the ground, you land with one foot onto the hood. Instead of trying to run, you just jump again. So you're just
Okay.
trying to land and jump again. And I don't know, maybe the car's going too fast, you can't get all that done. But I think if you jump one more time, maybe the car's under you.
Huh. I just feel like that initial jump, when you jump, I think when you jump up, you'd be hit.
Maybe you'd have to get up off the ground high. Listen to us talking about this like this is a serious
I
idea.
know. I do think you need a running start. Maybe you'd have to like run toward it and then jump on it
Well,
and
the
run.
same kid hypothesized if the car was going 90 miles an hour, you just like high jump. So you just like you get your body parallel to the ground and just hope the car goes completely underneath you, and
Oh
that's how
my
you
gosh.
survive it.
Yeah, your feet are getting taken out. You're going in circles, cartwheels in the air. That is not working. I don't know anybody that can jump that high.
This is why I have to teach high school because I can have these conversations. They can handle it. We can keep. It's just so beautiful. It's great all the way around.
Yeah, we don't have those kind of
Shouts to Liam
conversations.
for the delivery, just
He
live
gave me
on
my
air.
coffee. How sweet is that?
Oh my goodness, what a man! What a man!
He's a good honey.
He is. He's a good honey. I wouldn't know, but I'll take your word for it. Okay,
That
Hannah.
works.
Today, when you talk about habits,
Ooh.
okay, and I'm gonna be honest with you. There are times when I hear somebody they're gonna talk about habits or habits is gonna be the topic of conversation, and I think to myself, "Ugh, this is gonna be so boring." Do you react to it like
Not
that?
at all.
Not at all.
I am a self-help like girl all the
I
way
am
through.
too. I
Love
do
it.
like it, but I don't know, there's something about habits that's just like it's so unappealing because the purpose of habit is kind of in some ways most of the time when you talk about it, you're trying to start something that you haven't started before. So in
Yeah.
some ways you don't really want to do it. And so it's just like this grind fest that you start talking about. And so sometimes I habits I'm kind of out on sometimes.
I could see that. I could see that. I don't know. I like it makes me think of New Year's resolutions. It makes me
Yes.
think of um I don't know. There's this
Which do we need to
newness.
revisit those? Are we
I
gonna
do. I was just thinking about that. I think that's a good idea, but do we wait to revisit
Yeah,
those?
absolutely. At New Year's.
Yeah, I think that's the right
Like
decision.
that's our year two pod. That's our opener.
Oh, that will be so good. I need to look back. I mean, usually I check mine the middle of June.
Sure.
Yeah, because that's halfway. But I
Yeah.
need to look back, see if those habits took place here. No.
Well, so I need to shout out a book called Atomic Habits. It's written by James Clear. And I did read this book, and we have talked about many times on this podcast, despite the fact that the way I described about talking about habits, sometimes I don't always like key into the conversation. I'm definitely a habits person. I do better when I have a routine, when I follow that routine. I don't think I have some sort of mental illness that requires me to, but I
Sure.
just think I
I do
do
though.
better in
Just
a
kidding.
rhythm.
What I do, I need it.
Okay. I just do better when I'm in a rhythm. But there's this idea that just grabbed me and completely fascinated me out of this book. And I had never thought about it before. And
Hmm.
once I started thinking about it, it just was like, wow, this really makes a ton of sense. And this concept of your identity emerges out of your habits.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I think before we get to that actual idea, let's just take a second here and talk about identity. That's another one of those kind of buzzword conversations where you can say a
yeah,
whole lot and it doesn't mean anything.
yeah.
But as best you can in normal English, I didn't prep you for this at all. When I say your identity, what does that mean to you? What comes to mind for you?
For me, I think of your actions, of what you do. Your identity is defined by the things that you're doing. When I was younger, I was a soccer player. That obviously it
Okay.
wasn't my only identity, but it was what I was doing. Um, I'm a wife. I'm a cat mom. I'm a worship leader. Um, I did read Atomic Habits too.
Yeah. Hmm.
One
Hmm.
of my favorite books of all time. So sometimes I even tell myself things like, I am a girl who works out. And because of that, it is a part of my routine. It's a part of what I do. And so I just think, yeah, I think it's the things that you do. That's what people know you as.
Yeah, I
Was
agree.
that too, that was maybe too much,
No,
many words for that.
that was perfect. I loved it.
Okay.
I agree with everything that you said. I was going to say some of that, but you said it, so I don't need to repeat it. The Greek word for identity is literally, if you translate it literally, is repeated self. And that's
Hmm.
exactly what you're
It's
talking about.
funny.
It is what you do repeatedly. That's who you are, right? I
Yeah.
am this kind of person. I am that kind of person. And so he talks specifically in this chapter. that's called Identity Emerges Out of Habits. He talks about three types of change that can occur in our lives. He talks about outcome change, which we are concerned with some kind of result. These we'll probably use some repeated examples here, and these are the ones that just popped to mind immediately. I'm going to lose this amount of weight. I'm going to pray this amount of minutes a day. I'm going to read this amount of chapters in my Bible. Right? You're concerned with what happens. What is the result? Have you changed? Have you changed your result? Two, the second type of change is process change, which is changing your system. So this is more concerned with I'm going to do something different with my life and my behavior so that I will see these results. I'm trying to pick up a new habit because I edit the processes in my life to get me there. And then the third one he talks about is identity change. And this is changing your beliefs at the root core of it. And I think all of those things I think can be useful sometimes, but that identity change really just struck me big time because you mentioned soccer. You have
Yeah.
not always been a soccer player. You are not
No,
now a soccer player.
no.
And so at some point in your life, you had an identity change to where you were a soccer player and you did things that a soccer player did. And that just grew up basically out of nothing. And that is
Yeah.
fascinating for our lives.
Yeah. And I got to thinking, and so I'm like toying through all these ideas in my head. So, do we think there are some identities that just, or some habits, some things that we think that we want to do that we continually fail in because they don't match who we
Hmm.
are?
Okay.
And then I wondered, can it
Can you put
ever?
legs on an example? Like I know that's hard to
Well,
do on the spot, but
I think one of the most basic is working out. And this is where my mind was going. So let me just
yeah,
finish
go
this
ahead.
thought in my own head and see if it makes sense. But I feel like lots of times the beginning of the year, people will start a New Year's resolution. They want to be somebody that's healthy and that works out. And so
Hmm.
my initial thought was, well, not everybody likes that, but everybody can find something that they enjoy doing that gets them healthier.
Sure.
So you can have that identity change where you become a
Hmm.
health person. It just may look different. So maybe that's what I'm wondering is, do we try to put these habits on ourselves that don't match who we are at our core,
Yeah,
but need
I
to be
think I think there's
fixed
a
or
lot of
something?
truth to that. Yes. So you're saying we attack like the way that we have in our head, I'm going to become a healthy person, and the way we view that in our head is by running. Well,
Yes.
I hate running.
I hate running too.
So I
Ugh.
am never
Unless it's
going
in
to
soccer.
be
Yeah.
a runner,
Yeah.
right? And so I am not probably going to be successful at that habit, even though I'm trying to change my identity into a healthy person. So yeah, I don't I think sometimes we go after activities and habits that we think reflect the identity, but that we're still not into because we still don't like doing the thing even though we're changing our identity. Is that what you're saying?
It is exactly what I'm
Yeah.
saying. But then I think too, like let's say we want to, like I am not a person, I struggle with time. Now that's something that needs to be corrected, but truly it is truly a struggle for me. It's
Okay.
not just like flip the switch. And I kind of think some of it could just be a flip the switch. So I feel like I have to create these processes to make that happen.
Mm,
Not because I will ever truly inside the core be, let me say it like this, it will constantly be something I have to be conscious of. It's not
sure.
going to be a habit that just becomes a part of who I am. And I think I thought for a long time that habits should eventually just be
Mm,
natural and happening. And I don't think all habits
not all of
come to
them.
us like that. Not all,
No.
some
Right.
do.
Yes. Yes. I agree. So his big idea here is like outcome change is fine, process change is better, identity change is best. Because when your identity gets aligned with your habits, then that is the closest you can get to the things you're trying to accomplish are on autopilot because it is native to who you are as a person. And the other idea that he brings out during this chapter that I want to take a second right here and talk about is he says he doesn't know how goal oriented you should be with your
Mm,
habits because once you have achieved the goal, what's left then? Once you
yeah.
have lost the weight, once you have hit your goal in prayer. And so I think this will appeal to you because I know it does me. His kind of thinking was there always needs to be like this yearning and this striving. And if you ever feel like that you've somehow made it or you've accomplished it, then that changes the things that brought you to that moment. That it devalues them because you did it. You don't need those things anymore.
Yeah, so it's more about having more of like our goal being more um I want to spend more time in prayer as opposed to like spend 20 minutes in prayer because it should, right? It should constantly be working um to either get longer or more focused.
Mhm.
Would that be an example of that?
It is exactly what he's talking about. And it's not that you can't have a goal that says I want to pray 20 minutes a day or I want to lose 20 pounds. That's not to say that some people do that every day. You know what I mean? Like those
Yeah.
goals are accomplished every day. It's not that. But what he was getting at is there's more power. The deeper you can link that to who you are as a person and your identity, the more likely you are to follow through on that habit and continue.
And it's crazy because all of that is a mind game. All of that is
Yes.
that's
Yes.
all in our mind. And it just goes back to things that we've talked about throughout this whole year about getting your mind in the right spot, being
Hmm.
reflective. Like you have to do the work in the mind
Hmm.
because when you get it rooted inside yourself, we get positive change out. And I think sometimes we think it just needs to happen because I got up and ran this one morning, that everything is all different now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Dreaded it the whole time or, whatever.
Yeah. So when I really start to think about this idea, it starts to make me kind of sad because I feel like there are all these potential identities that people have,
Hmm.
and we close ourselves off to so many things because we're never willing to try to experience them in the first place. Let me give you a dumb example, and then maybe we can spin it towards something more serious, or maybe we don't have to. So I just took our daughter to homecoming. My wife and I did, Michelle and I did, and
Shout out, Madge. She looks
saw
so pretty.
shout out, she really did. And I saw all these kids come in with their dresses and their tuxes, and I got no particular issue with this. It just makes me giggle every time. There's the boys that come in and they are wearing work boots and jeans, and it's like that is who they
Who
are.
they
You know what I'm saying?
are.
That is
Yeah.
their root identity. And I just think to myself, like, man, for one night, you can't put on some black dress pants. You know what I'm saying? Like, it would really be okay. You would be okay as a person. It would not hurt you.
Nobody will think anything different.
Nobody will think anything. I mean, for a second, they'll be like, oh, and then they'll just move on with their lives. But that makes me sad every time I see them. Not because their life is somehow worse or
Sure.
something, but I think about the idea of cutting ourselves off from different identities that would be good for us. And I think, man, how much do we do that? That's really sad.
Yeah. I'm trying to put into perspective for my own life where that takes place. Is that something you can do? Can you look at me and say, "Oh, I see where that happens for you."
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. We talked about intercession last week,
Yeah.
and I don't know that I think of myself as an intercessory prayer, or I don't know. Let me broaden that a little bit. I don't know for sure that I view myself as a prayer warrior, quote unquote, in the way that we use that. I often think that my giftings for God are in other places, and sometimes I wonder if that hinders the way I approach prayer because I have told myself, not that, you know what I'm getting at? Like,
No, I
I
know
don't know if
exactly
you're
what you
that,
mean.
Matt. I'm not sure that's the thing for
Which
you
is
and
crazy
God.
to me though, because when I hear you pray, like you have people that will pray for you that it has a special impact. Like the way you pray for people, and then like when you've prayed for me, it impacts me in such an impactful way. I almost said, but in such a good way. You're so consistent with your prayer life. Like I would 100% consider you what we would call a prayer warrior and an
Hmm.
intercessor. 100%. Like no doubt would consider that.
Hmm. Yeah, I
So
don't
it's
know if I
wild.
do. So
Hmm.
I wonder how, like, and I'm not saying to you that my prayer life is bad or I don't pray. I'm not saying those things. I'm just wondering if because that's my self-conception, what I don't allow myself to experience or what I don't knock on the door of or what I don't or you know what, let's take it back a little bit farther, those spiritual gifts we were talking about, the
Hmm.
mystical ones like prophecy and healing, and if
Yeah.
I don't think of myself like that, what will I never even attempt to experience? And I just think our lives are a long series of closed doors that we never knock on, and I think that's
So
sad.
true. I think that's so true. Yeah, because like the healing and the prophecy, like I would immediately close that door for myself and say, "Oh, that's just too much. That's too out there. And not that I think they're wrong, but it's like, I don't want to title myself and pretend like I could
Sure.
be a
Yeah.
prophet,
Yeah.
but I do think we close doors instead of being or boldly bursting through doors
Yeah.
that are there. That's a great point.
So yeah, so I just thought about that and I thought about all those identities and then it spun forward for me into well these different habits that we don't even allow ourselves to do like I'm never going to consider myself a runner, so I'm just not going to train for a 5K. You know what I mean? But if in my head
That's
somehow
understandable.
yeah. But if my head somehow I were like, no, Matt, this is cool. I am a runner. I kind of like the shoes. I'm kind of into the vibe. I would change my behavior. That's where I think it is. You're so right when it comes down to it's basically about our own self-conception. What we think about ourselves has such a powerful bearing on what we do.
Yeah.
And I don't know that I really thought about that in a deep way before I read this book, and it
Well,
just
then
really bowled me over.
it takes you into things like shame. If we are bound by shame or by
Mm,
condemnation, there's no way to think of yourself in the way that God views us and what God says we are. And so then it's more difficult to pick up habits that elevate Him, but also allow us to walk in freedom and deliverance because we're living
mm.
in this place in our mind that keeps the door shut.
That phrase, I'm this kind of person,
Yeah.
fill in the blank with this, that is such a powerful
Mm-hmm.
controller either towards freedom or towards bondage like you're talking about, and that is essentially something you do for yourself.
Yeah.
So I do want to go to a scripture in a minute that will help us to unpack that from the Bible, but before we do that I want to hit one more idea in his book that I've really struggled with, and he said this is a quote from the book: every action is a vote for who you want to be. And so his basic point here is you don't have to be perfect with this. If you do not have a prayer life and you're trying to develop a prayer life, if you pray 4 out of 7 days, that's better than 0 out of 7 days. And I think you already know what you're going to say and why I struggle with this because I feel like I have to be super hard on myself.
Yeah.
And the only way I can get myself to change is if I go like radically further than I need to push myself. So I struggle with that. So here's the question: is long-term change the kind of change that he's talking about, kind of slow, fitful, that kind of stuff? Is that acceptable when you're talking about things you need to do for God?
For sure. I think for
Okay.
sure. I think I'm trying to think biblically based how that go. I'm just thinking as people. I mean, you look at us finding redemption. I guess I could pull on that. Like it's taken a long time for us to get to a place like you think of Israel, like over that time, I guess they
Hmm.
never really got to the right place. Did God wait? So maybe that's
Yeah.
not a good example. But yeah, I think it's absolutely okay. I think it's naive to think that if you want to pray 30 minutes every day, you're just going to go in and start praying 30 minutes every day. It's just not
Hmm.
real life, especially with our attention span. So I think it's better to utilize resources that are beneficial, like just showing up. If you just show up into your prayer time, set a timer for 1 minute, and you just showed up, and that becomes the habit, you are just a person that prays. That's going to benefit you far more than if you just never show up because the 30 minutes is too long.
I just don't think I can function that way. I
And
hear
I think
you,
that's okay to
and I
know
know
about
you're
yourself.
right. Yeah, but when you are saying that, I'm like, ew, I'll never change then because
No.
it feels like I'll fizzle. And I know for a lot of people that works, and I agree with you, and I understand what you're saying, and like I get it, but for me, I just don't think I can approach stuff like that. And maybe that's a flaw I have, but I don't think I can.
Well, like for my right now, so the last 3 weeks, I haven't gone to an actual gym.
Okay.
I'd been going someplace and decided it just wasn't going to work for me.
Okay.
And so I was waiting to go back to this other gym. Long story short, I get up every morning and I jump rope for 5 minutes. If you jump rope for 5 minutes, it burns a certain amount of calories. So I try to hit that every day.
Hmm.
And so I am still calling myself, and I know it's weird to be like a gym girly, but I'm still holding on to that identity because I'm
Do you
getting up in
say
the
it like
mornings.
that in that voice in your head when you say it?
I do. If I say
Yeah.
gym girly, yes, it's gym girly. But I
Okay,
still
I'm
call
sorry.
myself someone that goes to the gym, even though it's 5 minutes in jump roping. It's still doing something that is active above and beyond for me. Just like I walk throughout the day several times.
Sure, sure,
That to
sure.
me is not my version of working out. I am considered a quote unquote gym girly because I'm getting up in the morning and jump roping. That's kind
Okay.
of out of the ordinary. But I'm not going to the gym. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So like
Yeah.
I'm still counting that, and that keeps that mindset going, that habit that it's still a part of my life.
I like
No.
the idea of every action is a vote for who you want to be. I like that idea. And I support that for the people it works with. It just scares me to try to
Yeah.
do that. And so I just really struggle with that. And I already knew when I wrote this down. I knew what you were going to say. I knew what I was going to say. I just knew, but I felt like I needed to kind of work through that and deal with that because I just don't know if I can do that. So let me take us to James. And this,
Okay.
if you want to follow along, this is chapter 1, verses 23 through 25. And it reads like this: For if anyone is a hearer of the word and not a doer, he is like a man who looks intently at his natural face in a mirror. For he looks at himself and goes away and at once forgets what he was like. But the one who looks into the perfect law, the law of liberty, and perseveres, being no hearer who forgets, but a doer who acts, he will be blessed in his doing. Before I ask you what you took out of that scripture, because I know you did,
Yep.
I need to tell you, you probably know this, but all the listeners, ancient mirrors were not modern mirrors. It was not a
Surprise.
shiny piece of glass that you could see clearly out of. They were polished pieces of metal. And so when Paul is writing to people about this mirror thing, they know that that's not exactly what they look like. They're seeing a pretty good replication, but also you looking yourself in a piece of polished metal is not nearly as good as you looking
No.
in a piece of reflective glass. And so I just think that kind of changes the context of the scripture because you're like, well, Paul, how could you forget what you look like? Well,
Yeah.
you're used to looking at a piece of reflective glass. These people are looking at some polished brass. That's a whole different kind of ball game, right?
Yeah,
So
for
knowing
sure.
that, what did you take out of that kind of that whole situation?
Well, so I had kind of read into some of that same stuff,
Mm, mm,
that it wasn't a clear mirror.
right.
And so, my understanding then is that it was supposed to represent this superficial um, look or glance of yourself instead of something being deep and introspective. And what I really, really found interesting was the cross references, the scriptures that were cross referenced in that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
There is Matthew 1:24 through 27. It's all about hearing and acting on my words is wise, like the person who built the house on the rock. So
Yes.
when you are on acting on the word of God, you are as the person that builds their house on something that's stable. In Romans 2:13, it is not hearers who are righteous before God, but doers of the law who will be declared righteous. So you can hear all kinds of things, but if you're not doing and you don't have a habit with that, it's not righteous. Um, and then Hebrews 4:12 said, "Word of the Lord is living and active." And I loved this one, sharper than any double-edged sword. When we are
Mm,
serving God and using the word, I fully believe it should be cutting away certain habits that don't serve us, but should also cut the way in front of us for us to apply habits that bring us
mm,
closer to God. I mean, it is repeat. This is like we talked about themes. This is an overarching theme throughout the whole Bible, having the appropriate habits and being um introspective and looking at yourself. Am I doing the right things? Am I living the right way? It is the Bible is littered with
it
that
really is. It is.
everywhere.
This scripture passage, when I read it, screamed habits so hard to me.
Yeah.
And the reason it did is because I just got hung up on that like fuzzy mirror idea. You
Yeah.
can't see yourself clearly. And I think that just speaks so insightfully into you think you're this kind of person or you think you're that kind of person. And really what you're doing, you're just you're not really thinking about yourself. You're just glancing over your life. And instead of being a person who like just hears the word and doesn't do it, instead of being the doer of the word, you're not taking control of your life and your circumstances. It's almost like you're looking at yourself in this fuzzy mirror and you're like, huh, well, I guess that's just how I am, without
Mm-hmm.
recognizing and realizing that you are in charge of your own identities. And if you don't stop and see yourself clearly and really think about what you want to do and what you want to be, you could just drift through bad habits all the way through in life and be like, why can't I quit this thing? Well, it goes back to you're not looking at yourself clearly enough.
Yeah, and change is not easy.
Yes.
Breaking and adding new habits are not easy. And this particular book, the Atomic Habits book, gives all these great resources for how to establish habits
Hmm.
in a way that makes it a little simpler instead of so daunting and overwhelming. Um, we can't all beat ourselves up and beat ourselves up into
It's not
doing the
good.
right
Don't
thing.
do it. I'm not saying, just don't do it.
No, no, no. It works for some people. Yeah, but I mean, the word of God says it over and over and over again. You have to be a doer.
Hmm.
Faith without works is dead. And so we can't look at ourselves in this mirror and see one version and say, oh, this is just me. It's who I am. Well, you're a new creation. That's what the Bible says. So there should be change.
There should. The James Clear gave just an incredible example of how tiny habits can really add
Yeah.
up. And you may remember this from the book. He talks about the British cycling team, which would compete in international events and the Olympics. Do you remember this from the
Oh,
book?
now that when I looked at it, I did not. But now that you're saying that
Okay.
part, I remember now.
Well, they just for the listeners to have some context, they were horrible. Never placed, always lagging behind, terrible. And they brought in this new guy to run the British Olympic, like the cycling team, not just Olympics, but the British cycling team. And he went in and he tried to find as many little places that they could get 1% gains as possible. So here's some of the things they did. They redesigned the seats on the bike so they'd be more comfortable for long rides. They
Smart.
made their riders wear heated overshorts to keep their muscle at the right temperature for the best output for their muscles. They brought in surgeons to teach the riders how to wash their hands so they wouldn't be sick as often during, right?
Oh
So if
my
you're washing your hands,
goodness.
right? Yeah. They did research on the best pillow and mattress for sleep, which I'm sure they found at Scoop Pillows, definitely, right?
Of
So
course.
it wasn't just like we're cyclists, let's train harder. Like I'm sure there were some parts of it, but they looked at their weight room, they looked for efficiency. And so I just was like blown away by that idea of here's this big idea I want to get to. How can I break that down into a bunch of little ideas? And if I can make little gains in all these little places, it adds up, you know. And now the British cycling team, still to this day, they consistently are winning golds. It is like revolutionized their whole team, and they're like the envy of the world. And that process started by these little bitty things. I thought that was just incredible.
I think that's absolutely incredible. And I do feel like I try to think that way in my life. Like when it comes to how my days go, uh, by waking up earlier,
Hmm.
by getting up just a little. I don't even have to have a game plan in the morning. But if I will just get up a little bit earlier, it affects my whole entire day because I'm able to get some things done in the morning. But I start to think about spiritually, if we would approach it that way, if we look at an area in our spiritual walk where there could be growth, and not because we're bad at something, but we feel
No.
like our intercession could be better, or if we're someone who speaks at church, we could up our speaking. What little things can we do to up that or to change that? Like with speaking, what kind of books? What if there books? Are there shorts like on YouTube, like a
Hmm.
YouTube short?
Hmm.
Maybe I'm old having to describe all that. But can you watch like
I was
four
just
YouTube
picturing
shorts a
somebody in
day?
shorts
I
on
know I was
YouTube.
worried it was going to be confused. I thought I needed to specify.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, there are quick little things we can do to improve our spiritual walk. And I think we
Yes.
have to be conscious of that. It's not just go pray and go read the
Hmm.
Bible.
Hmm.
And it's
I
got to
think
be little things.
oftentimes it feels daunting. You know what I mean? It
It
feels like
does.
climbing a whole mountain when and these are like monumentally important things we're talking about. If you're talking about spiritually, that's the most important stuff in your entire life. And
Hmm.
so if you view that thing as this just enormous task of a mountain that you have to climb, that makes it so much harder for you to get started in actually doing it. But if you can break it down and be like, okay, well, I'm going to get over this little hill. I'm going to climb to that rock, right? If you can break it into
Yeah.
these smaller segments, I just thought that was a fascinating way to do that. And so I'm just thinking like, I don't know, my mind's just immediately drawn to prayer. It's probably because that's what we talked about last week. But
Yeah.
if you're trying to start a prayer life, um, changing your environment, like,
Yeah.
right, you set the alarm a little bit earlier. Or maybe another thing you do is you have while you're thinking of them, you write some prayer requests down. So
Smart.
wherever you get to your prayer closet, it's ready to go for you and you don't get distracted, right? You just break it into all these little things. And eventually what happens is you look back and you're halfway up the mountain and it doesn't feel like you've done that much.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a smart way to try to approach this.
Absolutely. Or create a space. Put a space where you keep your Bible and your prayer
Yes.
journal. I tell my youth kids we do the tacos method, the Thanksgiving, adoration, confession, others, self, and then an extra S for silence. And if you do 30 seconds on each one of those, I think it ends up to be like, I don't know, 3 minutes or something like that, 2 minutes. That is totally doable. And we practiced it last week and it went so quick. I think even the kids were like, oh, wait, we're done already because you'll do that 30-second. Did I say minutes? I meant seconds.
No,
30
you did
seconds
30
on,
seconds.
okay,
Yeah.
30 seconds on each of those. And it's starting small. And then eventually maybe just do 40 seconds on each. And then you're up to a minute on each. You just keep adding to it. So I think that's another way to build your prayer life is to find like an acronym like that and to
Mhm.
follow it, but know it before you walk in.
Right. The beautiful thing about these little changes are it doesn't feel like it's what you're doing, but I think you're kind of you're chipping away at your identity and you're like just
Oh, for
making
sure.
little edits to your identity, but it doesn't feel like that's what you're doing. You're like, okay, what's the tea in tacos? Well, guess
Yeah.
what? That's a vote for you being a prayer, right?
Yeah.
And so there's just all these little strategies. But I mean, the book again is called Atomic Habits. If you just want to go straight to it, I think you could apply it to almost anything you wanted to in your entire life. It really was fascinating to read.
Yeah.
So his whole book, or the thing I was drawn to in his book was our habits flow out of our identity, right? And
Hmm.
that's kind of like an internal thing. What you see of yourself, your habits are intrinsic. They flow out of you. I want to end this episode thinking about the opposite of that. If you were to forget about your identities or cover them up and you were to just take stock of what are the things that you do in your life, what are those things that you do in your life trace back and say about your identity? So instead of showing your identity first, you look at what you're doing and you go back and you're like, oh, well, this is who I am. I'm a person that does this. I'm a person that does that. And really, when you get right down to it, it is your behavior that identifies and defines who you are as a person. To me, that is a much scarier way to look at this because it's easy to say, I want this good identity, I want that good identity. But if you start to look about what you're doing, you may not trace back to good identities, right? There might be some bad stuff there too.
100%. And I think I've said this here before. I know I've said it to you. And this has been an embarrassing thing for me. But again, I struggle with time. But what that goes back to, the root of that, it shows that I don't value other people's time because when it
Mm,
comes down to it and it's time to leave, I didn't get up early enough. I didn't
mm.
get my stuff together soon enough. My hair wasn't working, so I thought it was okay to just take the extra time to make sure that it worked. And at the end of that, I show up late and someone's waiting. That to me speaks that I don't value your time. And that's embarrassing because I feel like I value people. I do
Yes,
in a
right.
lot of other areas, but this is a very clear cut and dry. Your habit shows me that you don't value the fact that I have time here too.
That's an excellent example of this because you would identify yourself and say that you care
Yeah.
about people and you care about what they're thinking. But when you trace back what you're doing to what
It's
it shows about
embarrassing.
you, yeah,
It's
it's not a good.
embarrassing.
I mean, there are worse things. I think
There
I think
are, but
everybody
I'm
recognizes
still
that.
it's
But
still,
that's not who you want to be.
no, no.
Yes.
And so what am I willing to put into place? And then that really makes you start to question, am I really
Yes.
willing
Yeah.
to change? Do I really care? Do I really care enough to change it?
Right.
Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh.
It's look, that's a clear mirror, and that's kind of ugly sometimes. It really is. So to me, when you're talking about like these are my identities, this is what I say I am versus this is what I am actually doing. That gap there, that tension, that stress, to me, that is like a flashing light for the devil's attacks
Oh
because
yeah.
there is that misalignment of, well, this is what I say, but this is what I'm doing. And so there's already some kind of shame built into that. And so anywhere the devil can hit you, he is going to hit so hard in that place because you're not aligned.
I have to ask this.
Okay.
I wonder, do you think that's where a lot of church hurt stems from? Is because
Ooh.
we have these identities, like
Huh.
I want to say this the right way. We claim to be this and we claim to be that. And then we have these rooted identities that we don't even recognize that we have that
Mm.
communicate things like what I'm communicating. So, two schools of thought, people have to be gracious and understand we all
Sure.
have that. But, second thing is, as a child of God, we should be introspective and looking, what am I communicating to people through these habits?
I think you're cooking right here.
I
I
think I'm
really do.
cooking.
I do. Because you can imagine a scenario when X thing happens and it hurts somebody such that it drives them off from the church, but then X thing happens to person two and they just kind of shrug it off. And
Yeah,
there's probably more than one reason that that could be
sure.
potentially true. But this idea of a central core identity, I think that that's a very strong possibility that there's something going on with that for sure.
Yeah. And I think we want to put the blame on something else instead of
Yeah.
thinking, oh gosh, maybe I did do something. Maybe there is something I could change or correct a little bit.
Well, so let's take it to the last scripture. It's found in the just lovely little tucked away book of Titus there in the New Testament. Paul was a writer, man. He really was. This is Titus chapter 1, verse 16. It's very direct. It says, they profess to know God, but they deny him by their actions. They are, check this out, listener, detestable, disobedient, unfit for any good work. So again, that tension
Deep.
point between, that's rough. That tension point between internally, this is who I say I am, but externally, this is what I'm doing. Here's where the cross reference took me on Bible Hub, and you'll love this. It took me straight to Saul's disobedience,
I saw that. How unreal.
right? Saul's like, I am the king. This is what I'm doing. But his action said, well, I am also the priest. And God's like, no, 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 no,
Oh,
no, right? Not a good kind of situation. So, I mean, that's about as serious as it gets. But I just think that that story plays out in who we are and what we do all day long, every day of the week. And we really have got to think hard about this identity and habit alignment.
absolutely agree. And I think that, again, that's why the Bible says that the road is narrow because this is the stuff. We want
Yeah.
to point fingers for a lot of things, but this is the stuff that I feel like as Christians we may stand. And I'm not saying that we're all going to hell for the. I'm not ever saying that sort of thing, but I think we may stand before God and He'll say, "Look, that thing that was rooted inside of you, I was trying to pluck out, but you never allowed me to do that because we don't." We're not introspective. We're not looking at these habits and saying, oh gosh, what does that say? What is my real identity?
I say this to you from time to time, but I'm making a pledge to you right now. When I preach or teach at church, I'm going to try so hard to lean away from the sin list that everybody does, the sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Yeah,
Now, granted, those things could be powerful and bad if you
sure.
take it the wrong way, but typically, this is the stuff. You're right. This is it. Our identities, our habits, our actions. And so I'm just making a pledge to you right now. I'm going to try to think hard about ways to present this to people because this is where I'm at, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And behind the sins, drugs, and the sex, I think that's what you said, behind those things and rock and roll or whatever is typically a habit. It's, yeah,
Yes.
it's something that is rooted that's deeper than just those things.
Yes, exactly. So let's wrap this up. Hannah, what are your takeaways from this conversation? Now, you're a habit person. You've already read this book. You've been doing some of this stuff. But what are you taking away from this conversation personally?
I think that what per usual when I talk about things like this, it gives me an internal drive. Like I'm
Hmm.
thinking already, what can I make sure that I'm doing as we go through the last, 2.5 months of this year to accomplish the things that I've set out to do, but also the things that God has intended for me to do this year. So it sets a fire inside of me to really think about those things.
Okay. My takeaways are twofold. I'm going to first try to sit in, be more comfortable with, and accept this idea of little votes for change
Mm-hmm.
and maybe take some of the pressure off of myself to always try to do something in one great leaping bound because that doesn't always work, right? I've
Mm-hmm.
given you a couple examples of times in my life where it did work, but I also sometimes I just crash and burn and I don't do the thing.
Sure.
And then number two, this is a thing I think that I'm going to be thinking about for a long time is that do my identities and what I actually do those things align? Or am I just opening the doors wide open for the devil to bombard me with stuff to get me thrown
Yeah.
off track? And I think I don't know what I think about that because I don't know that I spent a lot of time thinking about that period. So I think I really this is what I'm going to be praying about here over the next few weeks is who am I? What do I do? God reveal that kind of stuff in me. And I think there's all kinds of things about that in the Bible. I feel like David was always saying, God, reveal my heart. Show me what I actually am. And David's not thinking in terms of identities and habits. But when
Sure.
you play it out, that's what's right. That's how he ended up with Bathsheba. That's how this works.
For sure. I mean, and then you think David was a man after God's heart. I mean, the love that God had for David, guarantee you it was because of that,
Exactly.
because he was looking at those things.
Yes. So, listeners, I hope that you leave this feeling encouraged about habits. They don't have to be scary. They don't have to be bad because ultimately they're just outgrowths of who we are. I think the thing that has to be scary about this episode is we all have to go look at ourselves in a
Yeah.
clear mirror, and that could be an ugly kind of situation. But I would just encourage you to do that because here's the deal. If you don't ever do that, you're never going to get to where you could in God anyway. And He has such wonderful and awesome things for you. I don't know about you, but I want to climb every mountain that God has for me. And I think that's super important. Thank you for joining us today. We always enjoy going beyond Sundays and hope that you have enjoyed the conversation today. If you have any thoughts or comments about our topic today or anything else, please reach out to us. You can email us at beyondsundays@gmail.com or go to beyondsundays.pod.com for our show links and socials. And until next time, may the Lord bless you and keep you.